let me pause there because I'm starting to ramble.
Just to piggyback on what you were saying, and you're absolutely right with Saylor over these years. And people come to Bitcoin from different angles, and his was always to preserve his wealth and then grow it. And he's doing what a businessman does. Dear God, if you're going to give me these basically free loans to buy this asset, I'm going to do it. Anyone can sit back and judge it. Believe it or not, I actually had a chance to meet Saylor, right? Miami 2023, I guess, 22.
The pleb.
And I had a, yeah, he's at the pleb party for one. And I always think, like, what would you say to Michael Saylor? And all I could come up with is, Michael, it's nice to meet you. You're like one of the smartest people I know. But hey, I front ran you on Bitcoin. I got here first, man. The joke being, he's got how many now? But look, he's a businessman at the end of the day. Think about this. And if he's looking at the dollar, and I'll be honest with you, this whole thought, this utopia of, guess what? Everything is going to zero tomorrow, and you better have your Bitcoin. That's all it is utopia. The reality is the U.S. dollar will not go down without a fight, especially you got 184 other currencies pegged to the dollar. Okay? So you're going to see CBDCs come out, U.S. Fed coin. It's going to take so long to get off of that. Now, I don't know. Maybe he does have some in cold storage. I don't know. But everyone, I guess the long story short is, whatever Bitcoin you have, you're ahead of the game. Store it as you will. Some of us have different ideas on the best way to store it, but that's up to you. Welcome to freedom and self-sovereignty.
Hey, Ryan, I wanted to respond to what you had said about MicroStrategy Orange. I think there's a risk for MicroStrategy that people don't talk about enough, that Orange and the Lightning for Corporations project are designed to help avoid. There is a risk over the long term that the SEC or some other government agency steps in and says to MicroStrategy, you know what? You're not really a single company. You're not really an operating company here that's a Bitcoin development company. You're a business analytics software business, and you are a separate investment company that is an investment vehicle for Bitcoin. And we think you guys need to split those up. It's a risk. Projects like Orange, for those of you who don't know, Orange is an identity project where you are able to create a digital identity that is linked to a Bitcoin transaction and use that identity to do things like prove who you are when sending emails and things like that. If you guys want to go into depths of it, technically I can, but that's the basics of it. And so for MicroStrategy is going to take pains to say that we are a Bitcoin development company and actively have things that they're developing from an R&D perspective and a product perspective that helps mitigate the risk. I don't know how serious they are about actually seeing commercial success amongst these projects in the short term. In the short term, for now, I think that they are a tool to help them keep regulators at bay.
Can I just hop in real quick and then we'll pass it to Ryan? Sorry, I can't see your last name, but the other Ryan with the hand up. I think the thing that could be the saving grace, to Wayne's point about the the government saying like you got to split this up or do something in that ballpark, is going to be Saylor's majority control of the ownership voting rights. Without looking at the numbers off the top of my head, I think Saylor's at 58% control of the voting rights, and this number does drift downwards a little bit with each subsequent round of dilution. And I'd have to recheck those numbers, so I'm going to pass it here. But I think the saving grace, to Wayne's point, is going to be Saylor's majority ownership of the voting rights, because that's really what saved the company back in 2002 on the 99.8% drawdown, because they would have been the optimal candidate if there ever was one for a hostile takeover by the likes of Microsoft or IBM or whoever. But with that, I can pass it to another Ryan Mick. like me. My last name's McGinnis, another Ryan Nick.
Hey, Ryan, before we do that, just very briefly, and I apologize, Ryan. I don't think that what you mentioned, Ryan, just now about the percentage ownership has anything to do with the regulator's ability to say that we think this company needs to be split up. So I would just encourage you to look into that and try to test your hypothesis there. So I apologize, Ryan. Please go ahead.
That's very fair, and thank you, Wayne. I just want to say I appreciate that.
And I want to start off by saying, Wayne, your Bitcoin first mentality, I think, is what everybody needs to adopt, right? So I'm going to ask a rhetorical question here, and it's, in what world does hyper Bitcoinization take place, or a Bitcoin standard world take place, where what Michael Saylor is talking about doesn't come to fruition, right? You have to unlock the 99.9% of TradFi capital that is outside of Bitcoin in order for this to take place, the utopia that we want, right? And I think a lot of people just don't understand what a future with a Bitcoin standard could look like. So when they hear things like what Saylor's espousing, they say to themselves, oh my God, like this doesn't seem like the crypto anarchy world that, you know, I dreamt up for myself, right? But the truth is they haven't really thought it all through. The existing mechanisms in the capital markets, you know, they don't have to go away. Government doesn't have to disappear. You know, we could just tie a CBDC, you know, digital version of the dollar to a Bitcoin standard and monitor when governments try to inflate their currency, right? And that could be the way that we interact with things going forward. There's a lot of things that could take place going forward that allow us to actually adopt a Bitcoin standard that prevent a lot of the negatives that we all hate that come from fiat money, right? In a gold standard, they had to ask you to buy bonds to support wars, right? Well, with a Bitcoin standard, that happens too. But we don't get to a Bitcoin standard, you know, the money that fixes all this stuff, unless we do the things that he's talking about. So I see these people on Twitter attacking this man who's like the biggest advocate for hyper Bitcoinization. And I'm like pulling out what's left of my hair thinking, you know, what the hell is going on? What are these people thinking? Right? I don't get it. I really don't get it. And that's all I got. Thanks for letting me speak, guys.
You brought up a good thing about hyper Bitcoinization, because when I first came, and many others, hyper Bitcoinization meant all the fiat currency is gone and all you can transact in is Bitcoin. Very naive take at the time. You learn, you evolve. And to me, now my view is this: when they ask me, well, what does that mean to you, hyper Bitcoinization? And I said this: when everyone who ever hated Bitcoin, right? And everyone that ever hated Bitcoin never wanted to buy it. They buy it because they have to. They finally see the value. That's hyper Bitcoinization. I don't care how much you're going to see a run on it from people that put it down for years. Looking at you, Peter Schiff, one day you'll find out. But that's hyper Bitcoinization, because look, at the fiat system isn't going away. CBDCs are coming. Get ready. Watch your carbon credit score and your social credit score. Thank you. Is that a Foss, Greg Foss down in the audience? Get up here, Greg.
You know what's crazy? The amount of folks that have been listening into these spaces. We had Scottie Pippen again yesterday. I've noticed him at least 3 times. We have other people. I'll go look, and at any given time, there'll be as many as 150 people anonymously listening in. And then I'll get weird, strange folks that are like following me right after a spaces or something, and I'll go research their account, and it's, you know, the founder and CEO of some, you know, well-known company. And I'm like, there's folks, like, the message is getting out, people are listening. And even within the Bitcoin community, I know when, you know, we've had certain topics that have, you know, even Ryan's MSTR thing, it kind of kicked off a bit of a frenzy, even in the Bitcoin community, in the whole network. So the ripple effect is being felt. And so I really hope that we're able to use spaces like this to actually, have positive changes. And one of the things I love about this space is the love and the acceptance and the, hey, you know what, we're not here to chastise people that love the altcoin world, and we're here. I mean, I was there, so it's just part of my journey. I think another thing I appreciate about this space is the fact that a mother could turn it on loud and listen to it while she's doing housework and not have to worry about foul language that her kids can hear, and have to change the channel. So I think there's a lot of great things happening in here, a lot of great people, a lot of love. So I'm a super big fan of the space, and I think there's other people that we're trying to jump on. I think we just lost. Tomer, are you still up here, or do I need to go do some housekeeping? Go ahead. I see Foss. I see some requests, so I'm going to go do some housekeeping, and just love you guys.
Yeah, just to add on to that, and you're absolutely right about the love in this space. Sometimes it's tough love, but when you've run spaces for many years and folks that come in, the beautiful thing, those that were at the top of 2017, it was a class of 2013.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I guess I'm out. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hang on. I think we're having some problems. Somebody's talking over somebody else, and I don't really know who it is.
Oh,
Maybe
it's
God Candler, I think. Yeah, God Candler was talking, and I don't think, one of you could hear him. So maybe Pubby, try dropping down, and then God Candler, go ahead and take the floor.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask a quick question. What do you think about the 10 years going up to 4.3? What do you think about that?
Jam in there, Ryan, if you want to respond on this 10-year, and then Tomer might want to take the conversation a different way, and we'll let him. So go ahead, Ryan, and then we'll go Tomer.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this for some time now, right? I'll end up sharing the post in the Nest. At some point last year in 2023, around October of 2023, we had Mike Santoli, or no, not Santoli, the other one, the Bond guy who gets real active. He always gives the Bond updates on CNBC. He laid out a presentation on a whiteboard on CNBC Fast Money, the show that comes on at 5 Eastern. He was talking about the 10-year bond yield going to 14%. Which for me, they say they don't ring a bell at the top or the bottom, but that was the literal top. Like October 2023, that was when the 10-year bond yield barely kissed 5%, and it just seemed like such an unimaginable outcome, specifically in terms of the annual interest cost that the government would have to bear. It just seems so unrealistic. And then on New Year's Eve of 2023, that's the post I'll share in a second. That's when I said, put my full name out there. The top is in for rates. And I was also doing some analytics on the Fed futures and the SOFR funds and all that stuff. And the repricing event just looks so clearly from my perspective. And I could easily be wrong on this stuff. Like I've been wrong many a times before. But I think the direction of rates is so clear, it's going lower. I have also noticed, and I didn't see who even asked this question. I was switching rooms, but I have noticed the past couple of days that like rates have been going up. But to our conversation last night with Grant Cardone, him thinking that the Fed funds, which is at 4.75 right now, is going closer to 2.5. I'm with him.
Wait. Fed funds are at 5.13. I thought. Fed funds.
Yeah, I mean
the rate.
It's always a range of about 25 to 50 basis points, and the stuff that happens overnight or over a week, I'm the last guy to pontificate about where like interest rates are going tomorrow. But where interest rates are going a year from now, which is near and dear to my heart because I'm trying to buy my first and only home this time next year.
Good luck to you.
I really think we're going towards a Fed funds that's in the ballpark. I would say 1 year from now, in the ballpark, 325, 350. 2 years from now, I think we get to 275, 250. But that'll let me wrap the interest rate stuff there and go to Tomer.
Thanks, Ryan. I wanted to pick up, I somehow got booted off the stage when the question was asked about hyper-Bitcoinization. And first I want to clarify terms and then just offer some thoughts. So hyper-Bitcoinization is put forward as a term not of everyone accepting Bitcoin, but it was this notion that it would happen overnight, that something would happen at a hyper speed that, overnight every nation state in the world would start buying Bitcoin and adopt it and make it the standard. And I don't think we're going to see a hyper-Bitcoinization event. I think what we're going to see is the Bitcoinization of money in the same way. And we don't even talk about this term this way, but in the same way that we saw the digitization, I guess, or the internetification of the global economy, right? There's very few things you can't do on the internet. There's very few businesses that don't need to have a digital presence. Ultimately, even for commerce on their site. Well, this was very different back in the brick and mortar days of the world. And then they became clicks and mortar and digital first and then digital only, to use some expressions we've been having before. And if you understand Bitcoin as one of these protocols that transform and update something in the world and disrupt it in the process, you can see how we're going to get to a Bitcoinization of the world in the same way that we had an electrification of our civilization and a clean potable waterification of our world and our automobile-ification of the world. And again, Michael Saylor actually does talk about many of these things towards the end of that interview that he's getting roasted for. So these aren't necessarily original ideas or original framing of it, but that's what's happening, and it takes time and it takes place. And I do think this is where this tug of war debate around the purists are, that you can only have Bitcoin outside the financial system rather than inside of it, transforming it. My guess, and I'm not saying this is a prediction that I bet my life on or even are betting any wealth on, that there will be a disruptive transformation, that banks will embrace Bitcoin at some point in the future, but they won't embrace it in the right way, and they'll end up becoming obsolete as Bitcoin actually becomes a decentralized platform, a protocol for people to exchange value all over the world, instantly, quickly, cheaply, all those kinds of things. And the banks won't understand that, and they'll keep trying to centralize in the same way that even the early .com companies tried to be portals, right? There was only one company whose business model was get the fuck off our website. That was a company called Google, got you in and out as fast as you possibly could. And they won the internet, right? And all the people who tried to bring you in and build, what did they call them? Fences around, I can't remember the term that they used for trying to build little fences around their population. Walled garden. Thank you. It's a garden and you're trapped inside it. It's like a nice prison. But that wasn't what the internet was built for. It was built to connect, it was built for hypertext, a text that takes you anywhere else in the world at any point in time. And that's what ended up winning. And Google won because they swam with the flow of the internet, and Yahoo and AOL lost because they tried to build walled gardens in something where the information flows freely. That's a really, really powerful observation, and we can look at history, we can look at recent history for it, and you can see how all these companies that tried to build the walled gardens really, really struggled. And even if the model was a successful walled garden, people left for a greener, a prettier walled garden. Zuckerberg is kind of a genius, not for building Facebook as quite as much as recognizing that he was going to lose it all to Instagram and WhatsApp and buying those assets and making the best of those things. Maybe not so much a genius on Meta and VR, but that's just how hard it is to build captive audiences on the internet. I'm going to get going. It's been a pleasure talking to you all, guys.
Love you, Tomer.
Same to you guys.
I'm seeing Joe in the audience. Hey, Joe, how's the 10-year interest rate? So what do you think? We already listened to Ryan's perspective. Maybe you want to talk about it, because the 10 years is going up.
Yeah, I expect it to remain roughly at these levels for the foreseeable future. I don't expect it to fall precipitously. It can hover around a range. You've got some supply dynamics that I think are not getting enough attention. Joseph Wang was actually just talking about this. I mean, you have had for about well over 2 years now, really, this issue of muted issuance at the front end of the curve. And this is what I think people are getting wrong about the long end, is that with the long end, right, you have a dearth of supply. And Bitcoiners understand supply demand dynamics. If you are issuing mostly short-term paper, which from a balance sheet perspective is very easy to absorb, what it's going to do is it's going to have your front ends remain somewhat elevated, but there's not going to be a supply catalyst at the long end to drive the long end rates up. So most people were perceiving from this some sort of dire economic indicator. You know, it's a purposeful economic choice, because in the long run, interest rates have to come down because the math doesn't work with long end interest rates at 5 or 6 or 7%. If you would have had a true supply issuance across the entire curve and you not have all that paper trapped up on the Fed's balance sheet, you would have had rates for well above 5%. That probably would have sacked the economy, which is what the policymakers were explicitly not trying to do. So Janet Yellen, in doing what she does best, is sort of running contrary to what Powell was trying to do on the inflationary front and frustrating officials at the Fed by only issuing short-term paper. And there's been a lot of research about this recently that I can link if you'd like, if you're interested in it. But the supply demand dynamics with longer dated issuance matter a lot. And as you're going into the next election, right, or the next administration rather, you have to make a choice, right? Is your choice going to be continuing to fund not the entirety, but 30+% of issuance at the front end, or are you going to return to more historical norms with longer dated issuance to lock in rates? And if your forecast is a more inflationary decade, you know, say closer to 3% than to 2%, you're kind of foolish not to lock in longer dated issuance at 4%. That makes a lot of sense economically. So to me, like, I think you see a lot of supply coming. I don't expect, I mean, I was hearing somebody talk about Rick Santelli and, you know, his forecast of double-digit rates. That's kind of a joke. I agree with, I think it was Ryan who was saying that. I don't ever believe that that was going to be reality, because if the U.S. Treasury market is trading, the long bond's trading at 10%, explain to me what are the rest of the world trading at? You know, you'd see rates have to rise across the board. So I just don't see it. So my view is sort of this sort of higher range of rates. It doesn't mean anything stays in a straight line, right? What we saw, just to wrap up here, is you saw back in 2022, right? We were in the high fours on the 10-year in October, and then we had a nice bid. They went on a nice little run. Rates came down all the way to the banking crisis. They were, you know, people thought we were on the verge of a recession. And then throughout the summer and last year and into the fall, to where Ryan's referring, the 10-year sold off pretty aggressively yet again. And if you look to the actual day when we and I think this tells you everything you need to know. The actual day when we were putting in the highest yields on the 10-year back in 2023 in October, just a year ago now, you had